We saw last night that Israel's air defense systems were pretty effective in countering this recent Iranian missile barrage. There also appears to be no casualties, at least according to NBC News reporting right now. So what does this tell us about Iran's reaction function, in your view, and what could potentially happen next here?
That's right. Thank you, Dan. Thank you for having me. So first thing I should say is I honestly did not see this level of a response coming at the time that it did. I think the situation that we've been in for the last few months has been an increasingly emboldened Israel acting in the Middle East where it feels its threats are. And Iran obviously being a major stakeholder in the region, and particularly when it comes to the forces that Israel is targeting, it basically has seen its deterrence eroded over time. Iran has been taking hit after hit for the last few months, the most recent being obviously the assassination of Sheikh Nasrallah, Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah. And again, we heard the same thing out of the Iranians in terms of what are you going to do next? And they were saying, we will respond at the time and place of our choosing. This seemed to just be the normal boilerplate answer. So everyone was sort of thinking, okay, what next? You've been saying this for a month. Nothing's been happening. I feel like now Iran found itself in a no-win situation. I don't think that the calculus has changed within Iran in the sense that they understand that what they do not want here is an all-out war. But I think, as I said, no-win situation. For months, it's been taking hits. Its deterrence was getting eroded. And I think now it felt, look, either we're going to sit out and essentially risk getting hit further by this emboldened Israel, or essentially not take the fight to Israel, but respond in some way, shape, or form, and at least hope that it's going to trigger some kind of a recalculation on the Israeli side. Show them that there is something to lose if this were to escalate further. So in terms of, and if we look at why they did that as well, I mean, is this a deterrence issue? The last time we saw this happen was April. April, I felt that was primarily deterrence. This time, the difference here was that we saw different type of missiles. This is more advanced missiles, faster missiles. Yes, there was some kind of telegraphing beforehand, but it wasn't to the same extent as in April. It was a much shorter time frame. So I think with this one, Iran was hoping to actually have an impact when it comes to these missiles, but whether it was civilian, it wasn't really civilian targets. It seemed to be targeted towards security infrastructure, government infrastructure. It's sort of a message to say, look, not only can we reach Israel, but we can actually hit targets if we, choose to. So, I mean, I think this is where Iran stands at the moment. I think where we go next from here, obviously, will largely depend on how Israel sees this. But I think what Iran is also hoping here is that the U.S., like it did in April, will be able to kind of maybe contain Israel and sort of pull it aside and say, look, you can see it from the messaging as well, right? From the U.S. side saying it was a failed attack and nothing was really hit, no casualties. So I think the hope here is that the U.S. will be able to pull Israel aside saying, look, take the win again. Whether it's going to happen, I doubt it. Obviously, this was a much more significant attack to April. So really need to wait and see. Israel said it's going to retaliate. I mean, it's hard to say really where we go from here.
I mean, no, Nader, you're exactly right. And as the United States has said, perhaps seeking to calm tensions here, nothing was hit. And to use the words of President Biden, take the win. But of course, Israel has vowed to respond. In your view, what options would it have for retaliation here without escalating into a full-blown conflict?
I mean, the obvious targets that we keep hearing about, and apparently the Israeli, army and the officials have actually mentioned the fact that they could now take this and start targeting real infrastructure. I mean, important infrastructure, nuclear sites, and oil infrastructure, gas infrastructure. I mean, this would naturally be a huge escalation on their part as well. And to be perfectly honest, if Israel chooses to go down this path, I'm not entirely sure what defense Iran has to such an attack if it were to come, because Iran is a vast country. It has its own defense systems, its missile defense systems, but nothing in comparison to what Israel has. And I think if Israel chose to, they could overwhelm the Iranian systems if they choose to. So I mean, we're talking nuclear sites. A majority of the nuclear sites would be, central Iran. And obviously, some of those would be underground, so it would be harder to hit. But I mean, Israel has targeted these sites before in a more, let's say, in a minor way. We're not talking about strikes or anything like that. So I think we hope that it's not going to get to that level, but that's what they've been suggesting. When it comes to oil infrastructure as well, I mean, Iran has production onshore, it has production offshore. Offshore, you have the Gulf, the Mideast Gulf, where they have some, decent level of production in the Mideast Gulf on offshore platforms. Those in theory could be targeted. The issue with that is that raises the risks here for the Middle East in general and for the region in general, because in that body of water, they're not really that far away from Qatari platforms or Saudi infrastructure, exactly, or Kuwaiti infrastructure. Iran shares fields with some of these countries, which do produce a fair amount. So that would really be the biggest risk, I think, especially for the oil market and what we look at Argus Media most closely.